Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I'm back on the bop, living in the car. I'm off on the side of the highway. And I was thinking what I would tell you a story of. So I've been watching, we are in this great splat, this rebranding, this restart, and it's just a restart of the same old thing. It's like the Byzantine Empire. Go watch that. They were the imperial force for a good 2,000 years. And then over 100 years, they basically, it's like the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, they overextended in foreign wars and militarized their home, right? And just, killed the people who didn't agree with them. And so we're like there. Not even like, oh, it could happen. We're like there. So, and we've been there since, really, since 1492, basically, because, Chris came over, saw what a great place this was, said the indigenous people are really great. They're handsome, they're smart, they're generous, they'll make great slaves, and, um, and that was the islands, and it's still going today, the island that is always, the most sorrowful place, where it's an island and half the country is super rich people over here, and then the other people who are always in economic distress and have earthquakes. And why did this side of that island get destroyed by earthquakes, and this side where the rich people were didn't? Oh, Haiti, that's the name of the place. And the rich side of the place is Santo Domingo, I think. So you could, somebody there on the three might be able to fill me in. But I have been very blessed. If I have any talent, any great thing about me, it is to be in the right place at the right time and kind of have a sense about it that, oh, look at that. Well, I'm going to go for it. Instead of go, oh, should I do it? Oh, other people will judge me. Oh, I'm too fat. Oh, I'm too ugly. No, I don't think about any of that. I have my three little rules. Doctor, do no harm. Don't get involved unless you go in to get the innocent folk out of harm's way, and you have a workable exit strategy. If you can't do those, you shouldn't get involved. Number three, do not get involved unless you can learn something that will make everything else better. Can't do those three things, you shouldn't do it. Those are my only judgment. Other than that, I don't worry about what other people think or say or judge me. I couldn't care less, right? And there's only, I don't know, I get a lot of great feedback from folk. Google constantly tells me what a great channel I have, and if I want to be famous and get on the top of the algorithm, I have to sell my soul to them. And I say, well, I'm very flattered. You think that, but let me think about it. And then I don't respond positively in 2 or 3 months, and then they basically stop asking me, and then kind of put the screws. They said, well, your everything is limited because you don't have more than 500 subscribers. And every time I get close to 500, I get bounced back to 388. That's my default number. It's like really amazing. So my life has kind of been that since the beginning, meaning when I was born, my mom was 50 years old, right? Or 49, but she was, and I was born in 1950. So basically, it was, strikes, and she had a couple of miscarriages because, her piping wasn't that good. When I was born, I was dead. I was a blue baby. My mother's umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and I was coming out backwards, and so they kind of tried to pull me out with the force, and all they were doing was like strangling me. And luckily, there was this female doctor who had started a infant kind of ward for babies that were in stress. And boy, she pushed them out of the way, pushed me back my mother's womb, turned me around, with her hands inside my mom, unwrapped the umbilical cord, took me out, and I was, black and blue, and looked like someone beat me up with a baseball bat inside my mother's womb. And she took me out and put me on oxygen and put me on a drip to, flush out all of the toxins that had been there. And so it's, pretty amazing. I survived that. And then I was a real sick individual from then until I was 14 years old. But at 10, every birthday between 1 and 10, I would get really sick around my birthday. And when I was 10, my father was working for this company. He was their biggest salesman, so he got to use the house in Florida, and so we went there for Christmas. And we had the worst. We were stuck in the back of the airplane. My parents were in first class, and all of us were like in luggage, and all these people were sneezing and coughing. And when we got to Florida, my dad had rented the smallest Ford car, the Comet, and my mom had enough luggage for 3 years, and there's 7 of us, and so we were all stuck in this thing. And my dad put the keys to the car, folded up his jacket, put it in the trunk, and closed the trunk. So he locked the keys to the car, and it was Easter weekend, and it was like snowing in New York and 90 degrees in Miami where we landed. And my dad basically, the dealership said, "Sorry, we got nobody to unlock that car for you, so you'll have to wait until after Easter weekend." And so my dad kind of pulled the back seat out and saw that there was a little space. And so he kind of pulled out some of the luggage he could get out there. And then he squeezed me in there to go get his jacket. And between the airplane ride and being squeezed into the trunk of the car, I kind of got sick. And I got so sick that I ended up in a Catholic hospital. And this was my first, my second run-in with a nun. My first was in first grade when I was about 8, when I had just gotten back. My grandma, after having this fiasco being born, and my parents were living in a teeny house, and they put me on the porch in the middle of winter, and my Uncle Steve came and put a gigantic, because he was the head engineer of Idlewild, which then became Kennedy years later. He got his parents to put a gigantic radiator in there, and so I didn't freeze to death, but it was still outside, and I was in a lead dresser drawer, and it was the most toxic place. An infant that was almost dying, and my lungs went back great, and he made me this beautiful cedar bed, and I've loved the smell of cedar. And right then and there, my mom, she wasn't breastfeeding me. She was feeding me this stuff called formula. And my grandma said, "That's it, I'm taking him." And she took me away. And and from then, maybe 3 months old until I was about 7, I stayed with my grandma. And it was just her and me and all her amazing friends. And I had the best, experience of people, because she knew all these different folk. And if you go to my, Griot Publishing, XRATTED.blogspot.com, you will see my my publishing, Griot Publishing there, and I have all my novels, short stories, essays, and my most recent novel is called Legend. It's really called Our Legends. What's it? Well, when it's a book list, a group of short stories. Anyway, so that's there. So come on, John, give me a thumbs up, John. John Birmingham, come on, buddy. I did so much for you. Come on, give me a thumbs up. Let's see you give me a thumbs up, John. Come on, John. Johnny, come on, Johnny. Johnny, John. Jimmy, John. Johnny, Jimmy. Hey, everyone, there's John Birmingham, the most brilliant artist known to man, and he'll tell you so. He will, And he should be an A-lister. He's been a film. He's made 3 major films in his life. He should be. Johnny John, come on, give me a thumbs up, buddy. Come on. Well, now it's just Aoni and John. So anyway, I was being, so my life, people would look at it, and I was always right next to death. So I get, 7 years old, and I didn't have any of that kind of angst of mommy and daddy don't love me, because my grandma unconditionally loved me. All the people in her life loved me. And I was treated like, a mature, grown-up person, as a, 1-year-old, 2-year-old. That's why I learned how to read when I was 2 and 3 years old. And I didn't read like most kids do in first grade, by moving their lips, right? I could just read. And I remember, but in first grade, I was going to HRS, Hitler's Rifle Squad, Holy Redeemer School. And it was right during, it was in the 50s, the Cold War, and we were having like nuke drills every frigging, week. And we were in the shadow of the Empire State Building. It was this big glass window, and you could see the Empire. It was right there. And whenever the horn would go up, and the nuke drill, what it was we would get under our desks and say the rosary, like that's going to save us from a hydrogen bomb. And I would never get down on my knees under the table. And this nun, Sister Holy Roller Skate, and she was part of the Nazi rat line. She had been in one of the death camps as one of the matrons, and the Catholic Church sent her to New York to be a nun. And so she treated all the kids like she treated all the people in the death camps. Anyway, she said to me, why aren't you getting on? I said, Sister Holy Roller Skate, see that building there? And she go, yeah. And I said, that's the Empire State Building. And that is ground zero for Russia's one and only ICBM with a hydrogen bomb on it. And when it detonates, first, the flash of the light will incinerate us, and we will be burning carcasses. And then the concussive ray will come through and see this big glass window. It will turn it into shards like razor blades and cut us all up into baloney. And then, before I continued on to what would happen, she grabbed me by the neck. And this has been one of my sore spots, because I was choked to death at birth. And she put me up against the concrete wall, and she started, she had her hand around my throat, and and the first smash knocked me out. Didn't feel a thing. And then the next broke the orbit of my left eye, and then the next broke my jaw. And that's all within like maybe 10 seconds. And then a garbage truck, garbage trucks have always played in this little experience that I've been having. And a garbage truck smashed into the wall underneath our big window and smashed the glass window, just like the hydrogen bomb. But instead of all the glass coming at us, it just kind of crashed to the floor. And the people who were like administering the nuke test were out front the door, and they heard the crash, and they came in and they saw this nun, And when I woke up, I was in a hospital, and my jaw was wired shut, and I had a cast around my head, right? And I couldn't see anything. I could barely breathe. And I heard the nuns going on about when the inflammation of his brain goes down, he's going to have a lobotomy, right? Because I was in a Catholic hospital, and I was, under the, they wanted to, just get rid of me so I wouldn't be such a pain in the butt. But my godfather was Cardinal Cushing, right? So he's just a few hats away from being Pope. And the doctor who saved my life at birth was running a big medical school at the time in New York. because she was just brilliant and amazing. And she came in and pushed the nuns away and picked me up and carried me out of that hospital. And the nuns were lined up in the hallway um, to tackle her with me in her arms. And she kicked this one nun right between the legs. And the nun went flying through the air, hit about four of the nuns. They smashed through the fire exit door and proceeded to tumble down the staircases. And at the elevator was her chauffeur, who had been a retired um, New York City detective, and Dave. And I've had a lot of Daves in my life too. And so Dr. Teresa carried me to her limousine, and Dave drove away. And she brought me to her hospital, which was a research hospital, and they the care I got at the Catholic hospital, meaning the operation they did on my jaw, okay, the operation they did on my orbit, okay, and the operation to kind of stick my brain back together, fair. But she got these guys to make me a kind of space helmet that kind of held my head together and my jaw together. And I was young enough where the doctor said, well, this is an experiment, this new process, and you're the first guy, and you're the poster child of this because your head was so still forming that we hope that this process won't need to be operated. You won't need, to go under the knife. And so for about 2 years, I had this helmet. I mean, it changed at different times, and I had this thing. And my jaw was wired up for a good 6 months, and I could only see out of one eye. Right? My left eye was covered, so I had no depth perception. So I started seeing that bandwidth between parallel universes, right, where ghosts and goblins and things of that nature are seen, and they're not ghosts and goblins and demons. They're just energies of other entities on other dimensional things. And if you read any of the string theory folks, they're talking about it now. Now, I was experiencing that in 1957. And I would, and so then I didn't go home to my parents. I went to St. Patrick's, because if you've ever been to St. Patrick's, it's a big cathedral, but half of the footprint of that thing is offices and houses, and there's a whole underground catacombs and all kinds of stuff. And for a good 8 months, and I was running around with a space helmet on, looking to get total free access to everything. And that's when it was decided that I was going to be, a priest, and that I would be not like your neighborhood priest, but I would be the elite, scientist priest, And from that point on, so I went from there. Instead of going back to Catholic school, I went, and there was a really great group of Maryknoll priests and nuns that I stayed with in Garden City for about a year. And I studied them. And I got a better education than most people get who are really rich. I had these 7 scholars who were world famous in their discipline. This one guy was a psychologist, another guy was a mathematician, another was a physicist, historian, and there were these 4 women who were theologians, who were like, and they knew Joseph Campbell personally. And so this is, where I truly got on the scholarly path. I mean, I got on the scholarly path from birth until I was 7, and then I went back to my feral family, and then I got beat up by this nun, and then I got to stay at St. Patrick's for 8 months, and then I got to stay at this amazing castle in Garden City that the Maryknolls ran. And so I was truly, I learned how to speak Latin, and read Latin and Hebrew and Greek, and to kind of not really, because I had my jaw wired and my space helmet on, and I couldn't see, my different sensory motifs were cut down, so I wasn't exposed to the kind of prejudice that most children are. And I had this even though I had these catastrophic incidences with, with authority, um, that they were just momentarily, like when I was being born for about 20 minutes, I was killed, right? And then this amazing, Dr. Teresa came in and saved my life. And then she was a part of my life until, I was about 20, and then she died. But she was a world force. She was on every board. That's where I got to hang out at the Museum of Native American in the back rooms where all the great stuff was. She was on the Met board and MoMA and all of these places. She was at on the CFR. She was on all of the, part of the UN. She had a number of NGOs. That's how I got to start an NGO, between going to Cooper Union and being in their Department of Alternative Technology, and Sister Teresa, and my experience of going to the UN to all these things when I was a little kid, right? So I've had a tremendous life. And my whole life still is this, of these amazing experiences. And that's why I've died 6 times. But usually those things are in a small amount that actually gives me perspective on what's going on. Yeah. Hey there, Jamie. And so it's quite interesting, because people, that teacher, to the grave, that when they were in 7th grade, the gym teacher made fun of them being fat, or they were, so they became, some shrink said, "Oh, you're body dysmorphic." No, you're none of these things unless you let yourself be pegged as any of those things, right? What we all are children of God. And in the Bible and in Christianity, they talk about Jesus Christ's good news. Well, Christianity doesn't tell you what the good news is. But if you are like I, because of all of these people I was being taught by, like the Maryknoll, this one guy was, part of the crew that dug up, the New Testament, Luke, James, Mark, and John, right? That's it, those 4 morons, right? And they tell you the same story. They all have the same story. But they never really tell you what, all they do is tell you the homily. And it's like a game of telephone, right? But Jesus, he was, when he was 13 and, he got separated from his parents, and they found him talking to all the rabbis, and they were like, "Boy, this guy's smart." Well, why was he smart? Because he was educated from the get-go. So he knew all these languages at 13. And his family had been on the run because the Hebrews and the whatchamacallits were looking for him, right? So his family had to stay on the run. They never stayed in one place. And his oldest and dearest friend was Judas. And Judas Iscariot did, and so the most important part of the New Testament is when you go and look at from Easter Sunday to resurrection, that week. So in that week, he rides in on a little donkey, and everyone's throwing down palms, and everyone expects him to be the new king of Israel. And he and so the scribes and the rabbis come to him, and he basically says, "No, I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be political. But what I am here to do is to tell you, you need to step up to being, the Hebrew nation." And here's a good example. Here's John saying, "Hi, I feel horrible inside. I am alone and I want a woman, and I miss my kids. They have been them in Texas, and she is barely responding. Uh, Awful tasting fake meat. This is from an awful company that took. I mean, John, try and see the good things in your life. And if you want to be with your kids, go to Texas. Clean up your house. I'll come and help you clean up the house and rent it out. You'll make money. You could rent out the A downstairs, and you don't even have to rent the upstairs out. Just put all your stuff up there, lock the door, and rent out the bottom and the A-frame. And you could probably make $2,000, right? And then you could go to Texas, right? And then you could show your commitment to your children. When's the last time you've seen them? Basically, you really haven't been there for kids for at least 4 years. All you've done is complain. So that's the last I'll say about that. Back to the story that I was telling you. So I had this amazing education, right? And all the people who were amazing at educating me saw in me something that I didn't see, and were sculpted. I was like Gumby. They were like, like Cardinal Cushing wanted me to be this esoteric. He wanted me to be the next Thomas Merton. Well, they could have let Thomas Merton be Thomas Merton without killing him, but he was assassinated in Tibet, right? Because he was trying to bring Eastern and Christianity together, and the people in the Vatican didn't want that, so they whacked him. And he was great when he was writing all these books, and they were making millions of dollars off his books. But when he was trying to make Christianity what Jesus was talking about, they offed him, right? And pretty much that happens all the time. Martin Luther King, as long as he was, and I have a dream, as long as he was talking like that, not a problem. But once he realized the issue wasn't really race, class, and he started the Poor People's March, he only lasted 8 months. Malcolm X, he was fine as long as he was talking, white people are the devil, right? That was fine. But once he went to the Hajj and saw that everybody there, the 6 million people who came together and was like shoulder to shoulder with white and black and yellow and every color under the rainbow, he realized that what Islam was about was just, he was one of the people I heard say that Islam were Christians on steroids, right? Because Islam came after after the Hebrew nation, after Moses, and then after Christianity, Jesus. Islam slides in there a few hundred years later. And at first it was just kind of a cult until Muhammad's grandchildren, who are the ones who really stepped up and showed the vibration of love. And so that's what it's about. It's about love. It's about you showing love, unconditional love in your heart for everybody, not just the people, your wife, your girlfriend, your mom, your dad, and mostly, as our little canary in the coal mine here examples is, and he doesn't love anybody. He talks about Christianity and how he's like Jesus and he's following God's, God's talking to him. Better watch out for that canary boy, because, when you start talking like that, that's where the guys with the butterfly nuts come from. What you really had to be is yourself. And Canary Boy, you are an amazing person. You're really, amazingly talented. You're blessed by having a family who loves you, because no matter what you say or do to them, that's unbelievably, like, I can't believe the things. They still love you, and they still take care of you, and they still pay your bills. So just clean the house. I'll come. The only reason I don't show up, Canary Boy, is that you've thrown me out so many times and you begged me to come, and I've stayed there and I've cooked you a meal, and then you've gotten anxious and thrown me out in the middle of the night and I can't see how to get down the mountain. Well, I'm not going to put myself into a position like that. But if you actually want to do, get yourself straight, have, and I've told you this a lot, hey, let's make a plan. I've tried to teach you how to meditate, and you did. You kind of went into state, but once you did, you started to see what your Akashic record was showing you about yourself, and you didn't like that, because it was showing you that it was up to you to have a better life, and you couldn't blame anybody else. And, you know, Canary Boy, don't feel bad about being that, because that is our culture. Our culture is for, I mean, you look at everything that's going on right now, the, political, economic, environmental, it's all about somebody else to blame. It's not my fault. It's your fault. Now I'm living out in the middle of the woods on $400 a month. I'm living pretty comfortably because I don't buy anything. I don't go anywhere. I don't get anything from Amazon. I don't go to a new pair of shoes. If I buy anything, I go to the Christian store, and instead of paying $110 for a pair of shoes, I buy a pair of shoes for 35 cents. And and I am around the poor areas that are within 100 miles here. I've helped people start farmers markets, swap meets, health centers, and where people are helping themselves. And that's what Malcolm X did. His temple uptown, you could walk in there. My grandma and I used to walk in there, and they had a number of restaurants, and you could go and eat there for free. You could donate money if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. And you didn't have to be a Muslim. And they had a school there, and they had a medical facility there, and they had a place. We had no place to stay, and you didn't have to pray to Islam, right? They were there to serve everyone. Now, the floors above, yes, was the Islamic temple, the mosque, and the Islamic school. But the first 2.5 floors were for the community, and you didn't have to sign up to be a Muslim. And once he started doing stuff like that, and same with Fred Hampton, there's so much information. So I'm writing this novel, Legend, and I'm having all of the usual suspects in history, everybody, you name it, I'm putting them in there. But I'm telling, I like the founding fathers is saying, I'm having them in a restaurant talking to me and a few other people, and it's the moment, right? And they're explaining how, the story of the Constitution and the founding fathers is a joke, because it's the same as it ever was. They were the rich white guys, and they were sick of, hey, Anthony, good to see you, buddy. And Miss Divine Fish, consider myself also the canary. We are all the canary in the coal mine. We all are. And it's how, depending on how aware you are of this, is the level of your life, and how much it's going to be, whatever it's going to be. It can either be the life you want it to be. I was talking to one I have, so if you go to the Dude Awake 42, you can talk to a person, right? And folk here on the chat, they're the cadre. But the folk who are, I want to help, all the stuff I want to learn about that stuff, What, should I, a lot of people, I want to be a Mr. Cure. What do I do? Well, I say, well, first, what's your culture? Because, I look at everything as a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic alchemist. And what is that, gang? Shamanism. It's not a religion, it's a frame, a cultural frame, right? And so what I do when I look at it, when I was a shrink and I would take on an individual, I wouldn't just use the frame of me being a shrink and these people are neurotic or psychotic. No, what I would say is, okay, so let's build a frame of your psychology. And what is your psychology? It's your frame of your worldview of how you see the world around you, right? And how is that frame formed? It's formed by your social orientations, what job you have, what school you went to, what church you're at, what your sexual orientation is, all the different orientations you have. That's the social. cultural, where grandma and grandpa, the folks who came over from the old country, what was that, what food they ate, what holidays you celebrated. That's your cultural. Forensic is to take things apart, thread by thread, and look at that thread, right? And then, so forensic anthropology. What is anthropology? Anthropology was first a social science developed by white men to prove that white men were superior to everyone else, that you should let them take your land and your property, and let, imperialism is a good thing, and, if you read, The White Man's Burden, that's what it's about. We have slaves because we're helping them out. So forensic, shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropology, shamanism, not shamanism, alchemy. And what is alchemy? Turning base metals into gold. And you, Miss Fish, or Mr. Fish, Mr. Divine Fish, is that bag of water. All of you are, all of us, so say we all. And that gold thread is that thread that comes out of the top of our heads, goes through our different chakras, and goes up to where our soul is, right? Into the, and that's what your Akashic record is your server, this body, so you can a gist of who and what you are, and that we are, what makes our soul a little different by anybody else's is that we will choose to serve love's co-creation, right? Where all the other animals and all the rest of all our relations, the feathered, the skin, the scaled, the cold-blooded, the warm-blooded, all of those folks are wired to be love's co-creation. And they're not choosing. A whale isn't choosing to be a whale. A wolf isn't choosing to be a wolf. They just are. But they are our relations, And so we have the free will to choose to be in love's co-creation, or to be living in illusion, which we do in this avatar. So we are, when Johnny's talking about people going to hell, we're already there, because heaven and hell is right here. Where I'm in the deep green, it's heaven, because there's nothing there but me and the trees and the bunnies and the squirrels, right? And most of the stuff I eat, like, after Valentine's Day, weather changed. I was snowed in from Christmas Eve to Valentine's Day. And then it started to get warm, and things started popping out of the ground still in February. And I started eating dandelions in February, right? Dandelions are very good for you. And very nourishing, very filling. And that's my major dietary thing. It doesn't cost me anything, right? And then there are all kinds of fungi in the forest. And I aren't going after them yet, because right now the fungi that are there are the ones that are going to germinate into the larger colonies. So I'm not touching them until June. And then there's all kinds of other plants, and burdock, and bloodroot, and golden seal, and everyone tried to do that. Like during World War II, 97% of the American citizens back in the homeland had victory gardens in their backyard, and were eating their fresh vegetables came from that. And they were recycling everything: newspaper, paper, tin cans, you name it. They were recycling everything, and they were using the bare minimum they needed. It wasn't that everyone went hungry. Live in it's called prosperity, a culture of wasting everything, right? So I was, 10 years old in this hospital in Florida, and I was, had a raging fever, and they had this big 1950s color TV up on the ceiling, and they were playing The Wizard of Oz, and the edges were, blurring out, and I was watching the Winged Winkies come for Dorothy. And I was screaming because I thought they were coming for me. And this nun, who looked like the flying nun, came in and put her face right. What's wrong? And she had the worst, death breath. And I screamed and I went whammo, and I knocked her. And I hit her so hard she flew over me with her winged hat and went smashing into this. And I didn't see her going smashing into this cabinet, but I heard it. Then I went out. When I came back, my fist was in a cast. So if my fist is in a cast and I broke it on hitting that nun's chin, I was like big payback for Sister Holy Roller Skate. But they had tied me to the bed. My legs were tied, my hands were tied to the railings on either side. This one's in a cast, and they had one of these Hannibal Lecter masks, and my mouth and they had a little tube down my, they were feeding me that way, and they had a tube up my butt, and I came up, and I was better, because I came out of it, but I was tied to the bed, and I had these tubes in me, and I had the mask on, and my hand in it. I'm in my own feces and my own urine because they have just left me there for days, right? And my parents knew this, and when I kind of think about that, John. Think about being tied to a bed and a mask on your head, and you're in your own feces. That is what you do to yourself every day when all the stuff you write here, which I'm not going to read, is exactly that. You put yourself. No one else has put you in the bed of feces. You have. No one has tied you down. You have, Everything that you write here that's terrible about life, you have done to yourself. Huh? Not your parents, not your ex, not the, 7th grade teacher who called you fat in the gym, and none of the above. All of the things that you feel terrible about you have, because I feel blessed, So, actually, who comes in, not my parents, but my Aunt Gracie, my mother's best friend. And she comes in and grabs one of these nuns and basically grabs her by the throat and said, listen, go get the doctor and the head person, because I am suing your ass off, because she was a doctor and a lawyer, my Aunt Gracie. And so my mom's best friend. And she sure didn't believe in the Catholic Church. And my mom didn't either, but she knew how to manipulate it. She and the Pope were like this. That's why fucking Carl Cushing's godfather. Anyway, so my Aunt Gracie gets me out of there like that, and she basically takes me to a car wash and hoses me down, and then she takes me to Sears and buys me new clothes. I'm still in the hospital gown, right? Give me a new gown. This one's full of crap. So she, my butt's hanging out, and she takes me into Sears like barefoot, and somebody comes over, ma'am, and she just kind of looks at him, and they go, okay. And we go to the little boy's thing, and she buys me a suit, she buys me a sports jacket, she buys me shirts and pants and shoes, and a nice little hat, and she takes me back. And my mom, all the rest of my siblings, my dad, have all gone back to New York. My mom still staying in the corporate house with my Aunt Gracie, and my mom's smoking away, drinking cocktails on the veranda. And the sun's going down, and Aunt Gracie sits down and has a cocktail with her and starts smoking cigarettes. And it's almost like, hey, Al, you want a cocktail and cigarettes? And my mom is about to say, and she goes, no. And she goes in, and she had bought a blender. And she put fruit in it, and then added ginger ale, and it frothed up, she put ice cubes, and said, here, buddy. And that's kind of what I lived on. And we would go, there was a Florida, place near, And we were right on A1A, right? It was this big farm. And we go there twice a week and just get fruit and vegetables. And that's all they ate. And then they were part of a club, and we would go to the club 3 times, 3 nights, and have a big dinner. And they would have lobster and steak and get totally drunk and just have a grand old time and laugh and so for a whole month, my mom had some of the best times she ever had. And they went to the, Catholic thrift store and bought a whole bunch of kids' books, right? Not Christian ones, but like Stuart Little and all the teenage books. And we read them together. Like we would sit, and they'd be sitting in the Berkeline chairs outside. They dragged a big Berkeliners outside. And I would sit in a hammock, and we'd read I'd read a paragraph, they'd read a paragraph, and I could read it, and we did that. And they were drinking cocktails, and then until they couldn't see anymore, and I would read. And that's how I learned, because I could already read really well by the time I was 5, but because of my broken jaw and my crushed throat and larynx, I didn't really talk that much until, it was about 10, till this event in my life. And, basically, I don't feel sorry for myself. I'm living the life I chose to live. I live in heaven. I live in the woods. It's beautiful. It's rained here for the last 3 days. And I wasn't going, oh, it's raining. No, I was dry, and I was reading, and I was writing, and I'm happier than a clam. And I can live on $400 a month, not a week, not a day, but a month, because I don't buy anything from Amazon. I don't buy anything in the supermarket unless it's on sale. And the supermarkets around here are really good, because instead of throwing stuff away, like I bought, 20 pounds of chicken for $2, because it was right at that point where they, it wasn't nasty, but it was way past its sell date by, and so I bought it, $2. I cooked it all up at once. I wrapped it up in aluminum, and I, ate it over the next 3 weeks. And I would just, start a fire and throw the aluminum in there. And I had sweet potatoes and onions and carrots in there. And I bought all of those vegetables, again, at the supermarkets that sell, like I bought 20 pounds of potatoes that were growing things out of them for 50 cents. But I just kind of peeled it all off, and the inside potato was fine, So, don't cry for me, Argentina. I'm doing great, better than, Johnny Boy, who gets thousands of bucks every month from his folks. That's how he pays his bills. And having a job, my grandma had these 28 rules. And one of them was never work for anyone, period, unless they need you more than you need them. And that's what I've done my whole life, my whole friggin' life. Because I spent 50 years as an electrician, really good electrician. I was taught by a man who had the first master electrician's license in the United States, who was Nikola Tesla's bench electrician, Grandpa Stoll, and his son, Mike. And they loved me. Mike loved me more, as he had 5 girls and have a son. I was his son. And that's why he kept me on his books for 16 years, even when I wasn't around, even when I was, at college and at private school and seminary. And he put me on the electric bill on the payroll, because to get a master electrician's license in New York, I don't know if it's still this way, but you needed to have 16 consecutive years of W-2 forms, right? And, he didn't pay, he paid me he put me on the books for the least amount of money, so you didn't have to pay blah, blah, blah. And but he did that so I could get my license, and because it was written in the books that way, so the electricians could keep it in the family, right? And I was in the family. So even as an electrician, all those years I worked, I was 50 years working as an electrician. I never worked for anybody. I was never an employee. And how I and why I love being an electrician. I love doing it. I mean, there wasn't a day I didn't wake up as an electrician that I wasn't looking forward to working, because it always did jobs that were interesting, exciting, different than anything else. And and I had a lot of experience. Grandpa Stahl and I would go fix things. These factories in New York that had machines from the turn of the century, and that most modern factories would throw that stuff out and have slave, whatever. But anyway, I never, I was always a consultant. I was always had my own business. I was never an employee. And our culture, I mean, basically, JB here, he is an employee because he is in the employ of his sorrow. He is in the employ of the corporate world said that you need to have a job. I mean, he's always going, how am I going to pay my bills? Well, his mommy and daddy pay them. That's how he pays his bills. And he could very easily fit himself in, but he hates doing it. He hates them for it. He hates. Everything is hate. And now I spent a good 18 months with him trying to be a good, if you go and go watch his channel. The only things that have thousands of people watching his channel are the ones where I was, Al Bob on his channel. And he, we did about 20 of those, and he was making really good book, and 70,000 people were watching it at a time, and he threw me out. And then I went on an adventure, he threw me out, and I said, okay, so where am I going to go now? I had called up my friends, and no one in Roanoke was around, so I went up to West Virginia, where I helped this town survive a coal mine disaster. The side of a mountain blew out and took out this whole town. The bridge to the town, the power line to the town, and everyone who could move moved, and there were about 50 people who couldn't. And so I found them because I was dating this woman who was really like a saint, and she would go up there on Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter and every holiday and bring them food and have parties and the first time I was there, I said, what can we do? And it had been a small little town. It had a well. It had a water treatment thing. It had sewage treatment. It had, in West Virginia, they have a thing that if you have gas on your property, you can, and it's coming out of the ground, you can, well it and burn it yourself. So there were a number of places in this little town where there was gas coming out of the ground. And we welded, because most of these people worked in the mines, worked down the gas fields. And so they did that. I got a generator, a big one, like a hospital generator that could, burn gas. And the power lines through the little town and into the houses and buildings, that was in place. But the big line coming from the county was blown away by this accident, with the flood. And so we hooked that generator up to those lines, hooked the generator to the gas, started it up. They had electricity, they had gas. We put it in the gas system in that little town. So they had hot water, they had heat, they had gas in their stoves, they had electricity, they had water, and it was theirs. They weren't paying any taxes. The state didn't even say this place existed because you couldn't get there from any county road. Those were all washed out. So you had to come from the other side of the mountain and then basically drive. And, it's, West Virginia, so it's always raining. So if it was really raining, you couldn't drive down the stream bed. But, 10 days of the month, you could drive down that road. So that's why I decided to go. So I kind of went up 220 from Roanoke, and then I got to 66 or 65 or 67, whatever it is, the highway that goes from DC across Virginia into 81 and then into West Virginia and then over towards where another northeast-west road is. And right at the border of Virginia and West Virginia, up there near Stanton, above Stanton, is this truck stop. I used to call it the truck stop of the biggest bag. It's like it had everything. It was like the truck stop heaven, right? And it was truly amazing. And right in that parking lot, there's a big, gigantic truck stop, and they had all kinds of restaurants and places to get, barbershops and showers and clothes and get your vehicles fixed. But there was a, what do you call those places? Not an IHOP, but someplace like that, and a few other places, and this diner, very much, aluminum diner from New Jersey, right? And it was a really nice diner, and so I went in there and had breakfast. I had all of $20 to my name, and John threw me out. Get out! He had a hammer. Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! That's exactly how John looked, and that's because he had his Russian bride, who he had just picked up at the airport, and I had made them a romantic dinner. I cooked them chicken and vegetables, and had all kind of pastries and wine, and he went on the airplane from Moscow and hadn't eaten anything, and then he wouldn't stop. She was starving. So when they walked through the door, and I had this dinner, and I was the maitre d', I had the towel over my arm and the tray. I served them this really romantic, and I had them at the round table with a candle and a tablecloth, and I had a bottle of champagne and these romantic sex cookies, and I said, "Here you go. Take the champagne and cookies up and have a nice night." And she'd eaten 90% of it because she was starving. She was just sucking down the chicken and eating. And so I went to sleep. And when I woke up, John's like, get out, get out. He's like, he had drank 20 cups of coffee. I said, "John, what are you talking about?" Get out, get out, get out. And I walk outside, and the girl is out there with her Russian mink coat on. And she's smoking 4 cigarettes at once. "I got to get out of here. I got to get out of here." And John goes, "She's got hair on her pussy and in her arms, and she smells bad." And I put a few things in the car, closed my little room up, and drove away. All right. And then I got down, got on my cell phone, called up a whole bunch of people. There was nobody around. So I said, "Where am I going to go?" And I drove out to up to this town in West Virginia. And I had a full tank of gas, and I had $20. And I called a few people up there, and all the phone numbers were disconnected. And so I said, "Well, I have no other place, so I'm just going to go up there and see what happens." So I have money to get a really good breakfast, so I stopped at that diner. And as I'm walking in, there's a girl, and she's got North Side clothes on and expensive shoes, and she's, very bourgeois, and she is spare change. "Can you get loose change?" And I said, "What's your story?" She goes, "Yeah, I said spare change." I said, "Have you eaten today?" She said, "No." I said, "Well, come with me. I can afford to buy you breakfast, and you can tell me your story." And her story was that she went to a really prestigious college with all her friends, and they were all from Athens, Georgia. Very, upper scale middle class, up here. And she had gone to college, and she expected to leave college and have a job. Well, this is 2015, 16, around there. And this girl tried to get a job, and because she came from an exceptional family, and she thought she was exceptional, she thought she'd graduate from college and get her dream job. No, the economy had changed, and so if she wanted X job when she graduated, she should have gone to her place she wanted to get that job at and become an intern, and then she would have gotten the job. But just to come straight out of college saying, "I want this, $40,000 job," they just laughed at her, right? So She went back to Athens. She had a group of friends that she had gone to prep school with, and they'd all gone to prestigious college, and they thought that would get them their prestigious job, and things had changed. And no, that didn't happen. So they decided that before they just, got a job at Starbucks, that they had no adventure in their life. They had done nothing. And that was another reason no one wanted to hire them, because they were useless. So they decided to go up the Appalachian Trail from Georgia up to Maine. And by January, they had only made it. And I go, oh, so let's, where they were staying is not that far from this little town that had gotten washed away, that I had fixed up, and was, their the prodigal son. And so I said, well, let's go to where you are. I still got 3/4 of a tank of gas, so let's go see what's going on there. So we go up and we drive in. I got 4-wheel drive, and we drive into a national forest, on national forest logging roads, and we come across an old log cabin from 18 something, right? And we go in, and it's a really nice cabin. And it's got a couch and a couple of chairs and a couple of mattresses. And it's obviously, this has been the school kids' party thing. There's like wrappers of beer and candy and food all over the place. And it has a big beer and candy and food all over the place. And it has a big hearth. Right? It has one of those metal things with a big metal pot you kind of into fire, stews. And it had a wood stove that you could cook on. Right. And and it was that, January, when it was ridiculously cold, the Arctic, the thing that happened to Texas was happening to Virginia. And during the day, it was like 20 degrees below zero. And when the wind was blowing, it was cold. And all the chinking in this log cabin had broken out. And so it was like a wind tunnel in there. So, and these kids I said, how long have you been here? About a week. I said, and you why haven't started a fire? Well, how do we do that? We have to go to Lowe's and buy firewood. I said, you're in the forest. Go to the floor and get wood. What? There's no wood on the floor in the back. I said, no, the forest floor. And they said, the forest has a floor? I've never seen it. It was like these kids were so far away from, very similar to John Birmingham. Same mentality. Exactly here. If people aren't giving it to them because they're exceptional, I'm the best at this and I should be world famous because I'm the best. That's that exceptional attitude. No, I'm sorry, mountains. This is what we're going to do. Let's go outside. It's still sunny. Let's go pick all the road, and it hasn't rained, so there is loose wood. I want you to drag as much. Here's a circle, like a football field circle around this log cabin. Pick up every piece of wood, and every twig, every log, every limb, and drag it in, what fits through the door into that, right? Okay, that half of you guys do that. The other half, I want you to pick up all the garbage that's around here and jam it into the spaces between the logs, and just keep jamming more and more of that garbage in there, especially the plastic, the aluminum, all the paper and cardboard you place into the hearth. Just kind of throw it over there, and all the aluminum, plastic, and styrofoam cups, just jam it in there as much as you can, right? From both sides, from the outside in and from the inside out. And so within 2 hours, we had the place all, and then I said, okay, now we're going to break. Don't we need to? No. We just kind of, it's called leverage. We can break all of this stuff up. And so we make a pile of wood, and so here's how you start a fire. And I tried to teach John, I don't know how many times, he has 2 amazing wood stoves in the school. One in the basement that his only tenant, a guy named Tim, who is amazing. Tim put in hot water on the ground floor. He put in this amazing wood stove that's probably worth $3,000 and a new chimney. And he also put on top of the school a microwave antenna to downtown, and John Birmingham for the last 4 years has had free internet, and better than Cox, meaning The pipe to the school is like, and God knows what he can do with that access, So, and what does he do with it? He basically does this, in the chat here. And pretty much we had about 12 people watching, and John speaking over the chat, right? And what's interesting is every time I do this, when I go stop this show, which I will do because we've gone below that thing and I have some other errands to do, and I've been doing this now for an hour and 6 minutes. Basically, it just gave John Birmingham a platform to complain about, to whine and go on about, why am I not famous? Why are kids not here? Why aren't your kids here? Because you drove them away. Why are you not famous? It's because you want to make art that will, resonate with the observer. You have to make it about not you, but that thing that's human, that everyone can identify with. And all of your stuff, John, I really think your art is great, but in a very quirky kind. Now, I can relate to it because I'm a quirky kind of guy. And I'm a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, anthropologic alchemist. And so within all of those disciplines, I can see the threads of what you're doing and why I call you the canary in the coal mine, because you really do represent what's going on in the world, the collapse of society. You just have to look at you, whereas I got nothing supporting me. I have no family supporting me. I have no, I get a few dollars. The only 400, my Social Security is it, right? The only 400, my Social Security is it, right? And I'm too physically incapable. If somebody wanted, and a couple of people have been smart enough to go, Al, you are a smart guy. You've had a lot of experience. So I have this business problem. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, and you tell me how to work that out. And and the last time I did something like that was back in 2016. And, I helped those guys out. But all of my clientele that I used to do that for, that when I worked and made a really nice salary for doing, that's why I gained 240 pounds. I called my clientele up and said, so you got any projects for me? And they all said, we have replaced you with an app, meaning artificial intelligence. And that is what pretty much everyone out there is going to find, is that in the next 2 years, all of any repetitive job, and it already is, and the ones that are going to freak people out the most is that medicine and law, especially law, has already been AI. If you ever go to court, you see everyone has a laptop and everyone's seeing what AI is telling. The judge is doing that, the court person is doing that. Everyone there, even the lawyers, are looking at what AI is telling them to do. And soon those people place was the poor person who has to go to court. They'll have their day in court, which will be on Zoom, and they will just read on the screen what their, just is today. So get ready for that, because that is going out to be, I would say, 90% of the world's population is going to have to deal with that. Good luck. I've already gone through the learning thing, just living in the forest and not having to depend on the institutions of the status quo. And what is going to happen to me is that relatively soon, the institutions of the status quo are going to come to me and say, Al, we kind of need you. So we're going to let you go back doing what you do, and we're going to pay you pretty well. And because we know if we just let the AI run things, it will get people so pissed off that they will rebel. And a certain level of rebellion, like what happened on the 6th of January, because it models certain things that we're trying to move towards. But if everyone does that we are going to screw. Oops, it'll be like the French Revolution with the aristocrats, and they're going to be at the end of the guillotine. So I will be, once again brought into the fold, and because I am here to serve love's co-creation, not my own good or my own ego, because for the last 70 years of my life, I have been living an egoless ego, meaning when you live in the bag of water, to talk and interact with other bags of water, you need an ego. That's one of the mechanisms, but you don't need to have a psycho ego, right? The ego that was co-creation embraces is the egoless ego. Martin Luther King had an ego. Malcolm X had an ego. Florence Nightingale had an ego. Jesus Christ had an ego. So, but they all kind of had egoless egos, and it took them some time to get there. Go read the autobiography. John, have you ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X? John, have you ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X? John, have you ever read any autobiography of anybody other than yourself? John, have you read, who, you have a degree in filmmaking, undergraduate and a master's degree. We are in the COVID thing where everyone's going to school on Zoom. You could be a teacher. You wouldn't have to face any anxiety. You could do it from your desk. Have you even looked to do that, John? Have you done anything? Because you have this amazing platform of the internet, and you know it really well. I mean, why, I'm sure you probably have about 300 Gmail accounts, and when you do your YouTube, you take those 300 and you have them as a bot to tell YouTube how great you are, and that's kind of why you're higher up in the strata of the YouTube. And I'm sure you, with that knowledge of the internet and that accessibility and platform, you can go and trash anybody you want using all the make-believe troll names that you probably have on your Gmail. And Gmail allows this to be, Google allows this to happen, Twitter allows this to happen, because that kind of causes a lot of eyes, and they sell those eyes to advertisers. You see, I have no advertising on my channel because I can't get above 500. It was really pretty good. But I don't know Malcolm X much as any. Anyway. So why Alex Haley's book co-written with Malcolm X is so amazing is that Haley, black guy, really good writer, really good autobiographical writer, and a theatrical writer, right? And so he had a real hard time with Malcolm X because Malcolm X wouldn't talk about himself. He just kept talking about what was going on. And it wasn't until they finally had this meetings of minds, they kind of got snowed in together. And they were there for 3 or 4 days. And Alex Haley and Malcolm X got more and more angry at Haley for always asking him questions about him. But they're writing an autobiography of Malcolm X. So Ben goes, well, what about your mother? And that's when everything changed. And for 2 days straight, he talked about his parents and how great they were and what they were and what happened to them. His father got lynched, and his father's a well-educated guy, a minister, and he got lynched because he was trying to make a collective where poor and black people could lift themselves up. And if you go look at Jim Crow is a response to poor and black, not just black people, but poor and black people who were trying to lift themselves up. And the white folks thought they were exceptional, like John does. And basically didn't like the competition that the black businesses have, newspapers, have stores. Um, and that's what Jim Crow was, because Jim Crow really didn't start getting hot and heavy until Woodrow Wilson, meaning between the Civil War and 1895, virtually, that's when all these black folk did the, reverse immigration from the South to the North, and got jobs in factories and became semi-middle class. And that's when Woodrow Wilson, redlining, keeping people from voting, all the stuff that, and see, the folk who are trying to pass all these laws to keep people from voting, it's not so much racists, it's class. And it's to the point of not even being class, but, part of caste. And that's what's going on around us, right? And so now that our world is becoming totally digitized and we're losing the connection of the human touch and connection, and all these people doing all these shootings, it's that they are losing their freaking mind because of all of this dehumanization. That has been going on since Woodrow Wilson. And it really, started with, Christopher Columbus, So anyway, 1 hour and 17 minutes and 55 seconds, 7 people, thumbs up. And what's interesting, so the last show I did was under an hour, and I had 15 views and 8 thumbs up. And then when I checked that show the day before I went on, it was like I had 11 thumbs down and like 3 thumbs up. I wonder who did that. I wonder who has the bandwidth and the know-how to do that. I wonder. I really do wonder. And why? And who would have to do that? I wonder. I really do wonder. And why? And who would have the motivation to pick on a guy like me, who I don't care, And who's a person who's so self-absorbed that the audience away from this show, and for the last 40 minutes, the only person on the live chat has been John. I wonder, could it be John? I wonder. And he's begging me to come back and do shows because his shows, don't even have the interest people to dislike them. And the only guy who kind of comments more than, hey, how you doing? That's about all the contacts that John gets. And I write down what I think. This is really good because it represents this and that. And I kind of try to tell my feelings about John's shows because I really see John. I don't know any of you. There was Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, right? And Jerry will, hey, how you doing? 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 Hey, how you doing? That was Jerry Lewis. And Dean Martin was always kind of in a tux with his tie undone and a cigarette and a highball in his hand. And basically the French thought Jerry was a genius for his comic dynamic. And I thought so too, And I feel that way about John. That John, being the really the most representing of the, even Fish said, I'm a canary in the coal mine. We all are. But John is this representation of that to the point that it's amazing. Right? You want to see what's going on? Just look at that, and it's pretty freaking amazing. So anyway. I really care about John. I want him to succeed, and I wanted, I cared about him enough to stick around him for 18 months. Not that I had to. I didn't have to. I had plenty of other places I could go. But I felt I could be a good example. I could be there for him. I could try to ease him into that school because that school is that whole mountain. I constantly call it the mountain or the hill. and it's a spiritual hill. It has amazing energetics about it, and it doesn't. It's like a puppy dog, and if you're miserable, it thinks, well, oh look, this is what that person wants to be, and they will be miserable to the 10th parable. And then they'll see people drinking. Oh, this is what they want to do. So they then become serious alcoholics. They start doing drugs. Oh, this is what they wanted. They start becoming drug. And so that's the hill. So I didn't want to just get out of there and turn that over because I physically had to. I couldn't stay there, and take care of it myself. John was a perfect guy. So I stayed there 18 months and helped him. He had a guy help him fix everything. I did it all myself. Sorry. You might have paid for it through your daddy and mommy, but they had this guy who fixed all the stuff that really, really needed fixed that I couldn't do, and he did. And then there were a lot of water damage spots because the roof leaked pretty bad, and that guy fixed all the leaks, and we replaced the sheetrock. And there was a guy who lived down the next house named Alex, and Alex and I pretty much. There wasn't a lot of sheetrock to replace. There were 2 bedrooms, the kitchen, and the downstairs common room. And, we did that. I mudded most of everything, painted a good deal of it, not the kind of, Dali-esque painting that John did of the floor, but just, the common white covering of the sheetrock. I, did that. And so John has basically done whatever he thought was fun to do, like painting and taking care of this and that. But everything else is like, oh, I needed to kill myself. Really? I don't think so. And you haven't really. So, you're just looking for sympathy. Now, I'm sympathetic towards John, but I will not enable his self-flatulation and self-loathing. So 18 months, I tried to be a good example. Look at all the videos we're in, and people say, oh, people were telling John to shut the frack up when I was telling stories. And, because I cared about John, I didn't get angry because, I understood through my understanding of shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropology / alchemy, I was trying to turn John into that string of gold. But as my mother used to say, you can drag a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So after, 18 months, and there was a place where he just couldn't get past. He wouldn't let himself get past. And so when he threw me out, I just never came back, period. I went on and did other stuff. I had other people to help, other things to do. And that was about, almost 3.5 years ago. Next September, it'll be 4 years that I haven't been up to school, period. And in that period of 4 years, John begged and begged, oh, come back, please, please. Oh, we made contracts. He was going to pay me money, blah, blah, blah. And I went to visit him 4 times because I had other things to do in Roanoke. And I went up there, and each of those times, he threw me out within a day. One time, I made him a really nice meal. He said, wow, this is the best meal I ever had. I got tickets. They're making me so anxious. And that was the last time. And he did that. He waited till it got dark. And I said, John, can't we just wait till the morning so I can, not kill myself trying to drive down this 2-mile riverbed of a driveway, And I said, okay. So I hadn't really unpacked anything, so all I had to do was, other times he threw me out. He waited till I unpacked the car, then he threw me out, and I had to repack the car. So those 4 times I never unpacked the car, even though he wanted me to stay there. Oh, you can stay all winter here, And those 4 times I didn't, not a day, right? And the last time was, almost this coming September, it'll be 4 years. And so he wouldn't, he couldn't wait 11 hours till the sun was going to rise. I had to get out then in the pitch blackness of it all. Anyway, So I knew our driveway like the back of my hand. So that was the really deadly part for me, was getting out on the county road where cars would be coming at me. So it'd be really dark and I could see really good. Headlights would hit me in the eyes. My eyes would shut down and I couldn't see for about 30 seconds. So you're on a squiggly county road doing 50 and you can't see for 50 seconds. That's not a good thing. Well, the Lord was with me. And in that 10 miles or so, where I went to a cul-de-sac that I knew that there were no houses, there were no people, nobody, cops didn't come around, and I knew I could park there and I could sleep in my car and be okay. And I also knew that it had good phone reception. So I made it to that spot. I parked there. I called up a bunch of people. Still nobody was around. And I started to go to sleep. My phone rang, and a buddy of mine, "Where are you?" And I told him where I was. He knew where that was. He goes, "I'm going to a great party. You need to come." I said, "Sounds good to me." So he came in his car with a buddy, and he got in my car and drove my car, and his buddy drove his car, and we went up to Floyd to this, unbelievable party that lasted for 4 days. And it was put on by this rich lady who was backing the kids who were fighting the pipeline. And she had it catered, had amazing food, all the booze and beer, and there was tons of bands and places to sleep. And the party went on for 4 days. So I have to thank John Birmingham for throwing me out that time, because I would have never gone to that one of the best parties I've ever been to unless John threw me out. I would not have met those kids in the log cabin if John hadn't thrown me out. I would not have gone down and organized a number of different neighborhoods in Roanoke if John hadn't thrown me out. And there were about 10 other things that were amazing that I was part of that I would have done unless John. And one of the things John threw me out that I got involved, after being thrown out, I was in the worst neighborhood in Roanoke where all the prostitutes and drug addicts were. And I had a friend of mine who is a black organizer for, and we started a thing called community. I forgot what's it. Basically, it wasn't about black people. It was about poor people, and we were getting poor people a job, and Goodwill and people like that would have these job fairs at the big convention center, and it was just companies that went there so they could put themselves on a list so they could take $500,000 off their taxes, but they never had jobs for anybody. So we went around and we found companies that were looking for people that actually had jobs. And instead of doing the job fair on the weekend, like all these other things, and nobody goes to something like that on the weekend because it's their weekend. We did it on a Friday, right? And so the people who could come in these companies got paid. And the people who were looking for a job, it wasn't their weekend, so they came to, and we had music and that, and we got 100 people a job that day. And that was the most successful job fair in 100 years in Roanoke for this class of people. And photographer, so I took everyone's names, everything, all their information, and the jobs, all of, and I kept all that information. I had a few young kids who were going to college who were black, and they wanted a career, so I got them to be the demographer. And we tracked those 100 people for a year, and 95% of them kept their job. 100% of them kept their job for more than 6 months. People who left the job that they got from the job fair, they went to another job where they did better. They didn't go back to jail or go back to, and most of these people were felons. And that was the jobs, we found employers who would employ felons. And it made a difference to the demographics and statistics of violence and crime in Roanoke by giving those 100 people a job. Now, if a moron like me and a loose band of losers could do this, pretty much you'd think other entities could do it too. And if people actually try to serve the betterment of their community, the better community would show up. And so I got John when we had the fair to go and make a video. And I was the producer and the director. John was the cameraman, editor, and put it up on his YouTube channel. And it showed, and John did not appear in this video. What I took John holding the camera and would interview because I worked with all these people, all the people who were amazing, who were making a difference. About 20 of these people who put this together and had been running organizations and not getting money for it, taking money out of their pocket and helping poor people. And those are the people, and the film was all about cultivating a community. That was it, community cultivators. And it was a great video. Now, why doesn't John put that on the top of his playlist? Because it's not about John. It's about people helping themselves to step up to community, right? And John owns it, controls it. He could put it out there. I mean, he hasn't been able to sell any of his, I made 3 feature music, but that thing that he made about community cultivators, I bet, colleges are looking for videos like that. I bet you could sell that. And then if he was a righteous dude, he would take that money and give it to the 3 or 4 entities in Roanoke or any other place that are actually doing some good work. And there are a lot of entities doing a lot of good. You hear nothing about them, but because they're not the Goodwill, they're not the guys who have millions of dollars, they're not the people who are making it. Goodwill takes 90% of the money they make and pays themselves tax-free. All the churches do the same thing. They get real estate given to them. They don't have to pay taxes on it. And this is the problem we're having right now. And you mix in the COVID, and you mix in the ending of capitalism into a digital fascist world, and oops, you're going to see some pretty. You thought 2020 was wild and crazy, right? 2020, look, 6 days into 2021, what did we have? We had, a group of people who tried to overthrow the government. Well, it's a lot more and a lot less than all of that. To deconstruct it is a very interesting thing. And everyone who talks about it is talking it from their own side of their mouth. Myself, I felt it was more a corporate soap opera. So 2021, and so now we're starting to have an influx of all these shootings and folks in the hidden hand who want to manifest, insurrection in this country. Because if America falls idea of independent thought and democracy, I mean, America was never a democratic state. We're a republic. And what is republic? But in the flavor of the American republic is a fascist, male oligarch, right? And so, and it has been that way since Christopher Columbus. Look at that. It's 1 hour and 35 minutes and 5 seconds. So we're getting more people. Oh, Martin Young. Hey, Al, why don't you ask me a question? John just talked about himself and how, how terrible, So Martin, what do you got to say? You want me to continue to stay here in the holler light until, an hour from now, but I won't stay on for another hour. But if you guys start asking interesting questions, I might stick around a little longer. Literally, sure the topic. Come on. If you know, the topic is a stream of consciousness, and basically, what I was talking about was the storyline was all of these catastrophes that have happened to me over my life. I've died 6 times, and Every catastrophe to me has been a great opportunity to learn something. The three rules that I run by, my grandma had 28 rules, but my three major one is: doctor, do no harm. Two, do not get involved unless you go in to extricate the innocent folk and you have a workable exit strategy. Don't go in just to, oh, look, I'm here. And if you can't get out, no. Exit strategy, a workable one, is what's important. And you're going in not for you, but for the innocent folk who need to be extracted. And the third one is: do not get involved unless you can learn something that can benefit everyone you get involved with. And so that's the major point of discussion of this. And not so much the catastrophes, but how you could make your life better from that experience. Right? So that's been the stream of the conversation. I've told a lot of stories, and I've talked about a lot of different history. And I made a little bit of comment about John Birmingham's, going on and on and on. But basically, John has been the conversation for I want a woman, like own the woman. They have them in Texas, Let's see. And it's doing great by me. It's keeping my blood sugar way down. All the other, my blood pressure is really great. My cholesterol is like, and I'm eating bloodroot, I'm eating dandelion, I'm eating, and he was like, whoa. So, thrown me out. He was like totally wigged out on caffeine. And he is quitting caffeine. So John is 95% on the stream day, right? And it's all been about him and not about how he's, what he thinks about how to help other people. So, so he, Martin, the basic line: heaven and hell is right here on earth. And, you read, because Jesus was the smart one, right? And all we part of the homeboys, right? And because all those guys were ignorant fishermen, right? Judas did the most for the last, 3,000 years or 2,800 or how many years it's been. So that's kind of heaven and hell is right here, right? And if you're in Syria, you're looking at hell. If you're in the Middle East, and that was all thanks to Bill Clinton and to the neocons and the neoliberals and they all did that to be the disruption so we could have this globalized world. What do you do? Yeah, first off, where is your neck of the woods, and what could you do to make a place?